Hi everyone, this is Mason Winfield of Psi-Friday with Mason. This is our first installment in February 2026, and I'm going to tell you about a little tradition in my family called the January Curse. You know, I do a lot of interviewing of total strangers about their supernatural experiences. And it's very common to talk to an American citizen and go, hey, any ghost stories? Or, that's not a very professional way of saying it, but that's what I'm getting at. And it's not unusual for them to go, no, I don't know anything. And then you start asking the right questions, and you realize that very often in families, some of the most beautiful material is preserved. And it's true. They're not making it up. And yet it doesn't register with them as something psychic, supernatural, whatever. Now, my mother's family were from the South. They were mostly the Piedmont, the southern North Carolina, northern South Carolina. And they weren't spooky people, they weren't psychics and spiritualists and all that. But they always had the tradition. My mother warned me about this when I was a little boy. She goes, watch the month of January. There's just the January curse in her family. And my mother was one of two children. It's not a big family. And yet, she was warned as a little girl, watch the month of January, and all four of them, her dad, her mother, my mother, her sister, they all checked out in January. My grandfather, William Gray Ward, he looks like he was built exactly like I am. I barely knew him. But he was slender and not super tall, and he as long as I knew him, every time picture I've seen of him, he's this elegant Southern gentleman, wore the light seersucker suits, and he was known to be a mathematical savant. That's somebody who can do sums in their mind. He could whip the adding machines of the day. And he wasn't an idiot savant, like Rain Man. He was a guy who could do stuff, but he could also do quick calculations. And he was, his name was William Gray Ward. His family always thought he was related to the British poet Thomas Gray, the author of the elegy written in a country churchyard. Now, Thomas Gray was kind of eccentric, and he had no children, but his brothers and sisters weren't stopped from doing it. And my grandfather certainly had a strain of wackiness, because they lived in a very nice neighborhood in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he kept a loaded pistol under the pillow every night. I don't know whether they're worried about revenuers or the Yankees coming back or Sherman's revenge or whatever, but one night the full pistol went off and fired a bullet right through the bedroom floor, through the kitchen, into a basement bathroom, and shattered a sink. And I don't know if that was the end or not, but whatever. For a strain of nervous wackiness running through the English poets and my Southern grandfather, the rumor of his connection to the British poet sounds more likely. Alas, William Gray Ward, whom I barely knew, passed away on January 29th, 1959. My Southern grandmother, Mary Childers Ward, I didn't know her very well either. She was said to have been very beautiful in her youth. I didn't know her until she was up there. And, the women in my Southern family get really batty once they hit 80. They just go bats. Just sorry about that, but I got to tell it like it is. And yet, my dear Southern grandmother, she left us also in the month of January, January 25th, 1972. My mother's older sister, Ruth Ward Wells, my beloved Aunt Ruth. She was a knockout blonde. Just had life going her way. Very nice marriage with my beloved Uncle Bob. And my dear Aunt Ruth, she went batty after 80, family plan, and she passed away. Her official date of death is December 31st, 2004. But the reason that's the official date of death is because she was last seen alive at 11:30 that night, New Year's Eve, when she went to sleep. Woke up dead. As far as I'm concerned, that's January 1st, 2005. And my dear mother, Frances Ward Winfield. She spent most of her adult life in Western New York, married my dad, World War II bride, and I could talk a long time about my mom. She was a great storyteller. She's the one who told me about the January curse. And her date of death was January 15th, 2003. I held her as she took her last breath. That was one of the hardest moments of my life. But that's 4 people in January. That's and the fact that the legend of the curse was told to them, the children, my mother and her sister, when they were little, everybody was still alive then. Nobody knew they were all going to go in January, and they all did. And I'm not very good with genealogy. Maybe someday I'll recruit a genealogist to try to figure out where did this legend come from. Because the people I've been able to look up, besides these 4 in my Southern family, I haven't found any other January deaths. But they were a big clan. And their wards and their childers and their whatever. So maybe next year at this time, if I make it, next year at this time, maybe I'll have this researched a little bit better, and I will be able to narrow down the January curse. But if you're seeing this right now, you know that I made it through January. I will call my Southern first cousin, Dr. Anna Wells Bloomer, and we'll just share each other a little toast on surviving another January. Thanks for joining us on Psi-Friday with Mason. Cheers.